felt all along that we were doing something that was really exciting and really dangerous at some level we weren't sure about.
It was a tough going getting the picture made and finished.
They told us, that we have to stop working on this movie, and it never ever happened to me before.
So I knew that money was coming in cash and paper bags and, like crazy stuff.
Oh, and he had to go to the hospital. And I thought, oh, I hope his arm's not broken. Thank God his arm wasn't broken.
One was killed and the other went to prison, I think.
I said, well, hang on, what's going on here?
Well, my reaction to the book Winter Kills was that it was scary, first of all. Condon was a visionary, and he had his finger on the pulse of certain kind of really powerful, greedy men. At that time, I was, like everybody else, totally enamored with my President Kennedy, and here with implications that, subtle as they were, that he was a womanizer and that his father bought him the presidency and that they were involved in offshore conspiracies and Cuban nightmare sort of agendas with the mob. Part of the book was just about how this president was groomed by his father to take office, how deals were made and that kind of crooked stuff that went on. It said a lot of things about powerful people in code, but the code was identifiable by anyone. Nobody wanted to touch it in Hollywood. It had to almost be financed by gangsters, by outsiders, which it was. Lenny Goldberg and Robert Sterling had this company called Sterling Gold, and they released the Emmanuelle pictures, and their biggest one, I think, was called Black Emmanuelle, and they made a lot of money. So then they wanted to go into another direction. They basically wanted to become real producers, producers of quality stuff. I first became involved with this project through my agent, Robbie Lance, in New York. And Robbie Lance got a call from a fellow named Robert Sterling and said, we have a book called Winter Kills, and we'd love to get Milos Forman to direct it. And so Robbie said, well, Milos is not available, but if you like somebody else, you should get Bill Richard, And I got a hold of the book. They sent me the book, and I was sure I wasn't going to do this movie because the book was sprawling and complicated and theory upon theory about the president, but how to make all that work in a way that would be palatable to people so that they can watch it without being a litany of accusations and conspiracy theories.
I shot President Keegan.
And in the end, I said, okay, I'll do this, but I got to do it as a comedy because there's no way to approach this tragedy. Maybe I would do the whole book just like a kind of political Alice in Wonderland. Here would be this innocent kid who was protected at some level by his family, by his wealth, by his education, by his friends in a womb-like world. And all around him are these terrifying experiences. And then slowly these illusions fall from his eyes, the scales of these illusions, which have fallen from the eyes of our whole country. People got actually scared when they read the screenplay. And that's why when Jeff got involved and the other actors got involved, there was something courageous about all of them to participate in this project. Of course, I'd seen Jeff in The Last Picture Show, and then just before we were shooting, Rancho Deluxe came out. I thought, this guy is great. He's going to be a star, man. He just was all over him,
I've always been attracted to unusual projects, projects that I would like to see in the audience. I love going to movies, and I always like to be surprised. And Winter Kills was a movie like that, where I didn't know what was going to happen next. And plus, it was based on something that really happened, and it had a lot of spin to it.
He was with ICM. His agent was Jack Gilardi. They were grooming him for a star. They didn't know who this kid was, which was meaning me, who had only directed documentaries. So I had meetings with Jack. He agreed that the part was good, but he didn't know whether his actor should be in this picture, right?
That I really owe getting the gig to one of my oldest friends, David Greenwald, who was an old high school buddy, and in the early part of my career was also my stand-in.
Later on, I put him in the movie. You can see him in the movie. Anyway, I met David at a party and started telling him about the project. And I said, oh, well, you got to tell him how it's going to be. And plus, I'm living near Jeff. And he said, really? I said, yeah. And so, because one of the things I did is I rented an apartment in Malibu to say that I was near Jeff so he could just stop, which is, I can't believe I did this stuff now that I think about it.
And I had just finished, or was it maybe I was in the midst of doing the remake of King Kong. And Bill pitched me this movie, Winter Kills, and he said, "This can be your Kong. You'll be Kong. It'll be like your Kong when you do this movie."
Well, then we went from my apartment and we went to a coffee shop on PCH. And so we were going to look through the screenplay. So we started reading the screenplay. And we come to the part where John Huston says,
What do you think these girls are doing under this blanket, son?
I don't know, Pa.
Think they're playing with my nuts?
and I'm reading this, and Jeff is laughing. And then all of a sudden we realized that the whole restaurant was laughing. And then some people started to applaud. And I said, see, Jeff, that's only the beginning, man. If they're clapping in the coffee shop, they'll be clapping in the theaters.
And of course, another thing that attracted me was this cast that Bill was going to assemble. And you know, at first when he told me his idea, I said, "Oh yeah, well that's great. You know, good luck. You're a first-time director, and fine."
Paul Kohner, who was John Huston's agent, wanted nothing to do with it. So there was a woman in the agency named Maggie Abbott, and she thought it was wonderful. She said, "It doesn't matter what they say. I'm sending it to John. He should read it." And so John read it, and apparently Huston had the same opinions of Joseph Kennedy that Richard Condon did. Word came back that John loved the script. He would love to be part of it. So I went down and I met with him first time in San Diego in a hotel suite where he was shooting a movie. And all I remember is that when I walked in, I said, "How you doing? This is John." And John just stood up with a growl. "How do you do, Mr. Richard? It's very nice to meet you. And I enjoyed your screenplay very much." I said, "Oh, geez, thanks, John. From you, that's wonderful." And he said, "Oh, it's a piece of work." He said, and I knew some of the players, so I think we could have a very good time with this. It could be a very fine project."